Alrighty, in today's live tutorial, I'm going to be going over how the Jericho 4.0 software is going to revolutionize the wholesaler and the investor industry. So if you're just trying to get your first deal or you're trying to maximize your time and efficiency with underwriting and sending out LOIs to sellers and agents, then stick around till today's video for I'm going to show you how we are going to create 100 cash offers and 100 creative finance offers all within a couple of minutes, which will then be email blasted to our seller or to our agent. So let's get started. I'm calling the angels down. I'm storming the gates of hell. Tell the devil he don't own my soul. I'm taking back what the enemy stole. I'm raising the battle cry. I'm holding the battle. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to pull up PropStream. So I'm going to head on over to PropStream's website. I actually have a list that I've pulled, and I'm going to be using this list for demonstration purposes in today's tutorial. So you can see here on this particular list from PropStream that there's 200 something properties. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to import this list directly into the Jericho software. Yes, we can actually do that. So I'm going to click on the Actions tab here, and I'm going to export this CSV, which contains 200 something properties. So now that I have the exported data set from PropStream, all I did was just move over that CSV file, and I had placed that into my designated exported properties folder. So my exported properties folder is going to have all the CSV files that I have designated from PropStream. And what we're basically going to do is just import that CSV file directly into the Jericho software. So the Jericho software has two functionalities here under the Leads Import tab. You can insert a CSV file, a single CSV file automatically, or you can import multiple CSV files. So if you're working on multiple data sets from different counties or different states, then you have that ability too. So you have the option to import a specific file or all files that you've exported from PropStream. For us, we're going to focus on the single CSV file since that was the one that I had just downloaded with 200 something properties. I'm going to reopen that file that I had saved from PropStream. Click on Don't Convert, and we can see here that this is indeed the 200 something data set that I had just exported from PropStream. So instead of just copying and pasting that data line by line, or in this case row by row, we're just going to inject it. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to exit out of the Excel file here. And what we basically need is just the folder path, which is indicated here. This is the folder path, and then this is the folder name, and then of course the extension of the file, which in this case is a CSV. I'm going to bring up my timer here, and I'm going to place that timer here on the screen. I'm actually very curious to know how long it's going to take me to analyze the data set, create the LOIs themselves, because we're going to create 100 plus offers for both cash and creative finance. The goal for today's tutorial is to do 25 subject to LOIs, 25 seller finance, 25 reverse seller finance, and 25 hybrid offers with a cash offer attached to the same LOI. So it'll be cash versus creative finance that the seller or agent can then distinguish and see which offer is best suited for them. And immediately I'm going to jump into this, and I'm going to click on this orange button here, which is going to import that first CSV file that we had just exported from PropStream. So the dataset was imported successfully. Right now it's in a red font, which is totally fine and normal. So we're just going to change the color of the font. We're going to change this to black. I'm going to bold the text. I'm going to change the font type to Tahoma, which is my favorite font. And then we'll just reduce the font size ever so slightly. I'll move that timer over to the right hand side. And we're going to change the format here for the MLS phone number to number, so that this is all according to the cell number of the agent. So now we have our data set here. It's nice and clean. Everything's been imported accordingly. We have 200 something properties here that have been injected into the Jericho software. Now for visualization purposes, I'm actually going to change the font color here on the top header to something more unique, just so I can see it more clearly. And now I'm going to start analyzing and filtering the data set. So I'm going to analyze it in a way where I have to look at the entire data set for subject to, seller finance, hybrid, because we're going to do all of these auto underwrites for all of these properties at the exact same time.
My life be like, yeah. My life be like, yeah.
So now we're going to import the rental data. Rental data is going to be in column N. Now this is probably my favorite functionality here within the leads import tab here on the Jericho, as it's going to automatically find the medium rental value or the fair market value of the property, depending on where the property is sitting in. So what I mean by that is that the macro will distinguish the metropolitan area and know distinctively whether or not the property is sitting in a highly densible metropolitan area, such as Boston, New York, Miami, or if it's in a suburb. And so the rental data that's going to be extracted is going to be for that specified location, and it knows that based off of the zip code that's in column B and the number of bedrooms. So the greater number of bedrooms in a property, the higher rental amount we can charge to the tenant as well. So now I'm going to click on this button here where it says get rental data. I'm going to save my file here one more time. And I'm going to click on get rental data. Maybe I'll just move this column here to the right just a little bit more so everything looks nice and pretty. Let's click on get rental data now. And we can see here that all of this is being auto-populated for us. You can say goodbye to Redfin, say goodbye to Zillow. We're using a baseline rental amount that we can trust because this is coming from a government website. Yes, it's coming from a government website. And so I know with confidence that this rental data that's being provided for us is the baseline rental amount that the wholesaler or the investor can count on, and not just a simple estimate that Zillow or Redfin will provide to us. So we have 200 something rental amounts here that's been auto-populated for our properties, which is fantastic. It looks like only one came back as rental or zip code not found. So if you see something like this, then you would just have to manually type in the property address on Google and try to get a fair estimated rental value for that unit. So we're good to go on that part. Now we can go into the auto underwrite. So this is going to be my next favorite feature of the Jericho software. So now what we need to do is we need to copy and paste this information, the information that we want to target first. So the information is going to be that specified property. So we're going to copy and paste those specified properties that we want to target first for the auto underwrite feature. So we're going to do 25 subject to LOIs, 25 seller finance, 25 hybrid LOIs, and 25 reverse seller finance. Now I'm going to manipulate the mortgage amount and possibly the rental value here ever so slightly so that I can comfortably demonstrate the seller finance and hybrid acquisitions when we're creating the auto underwrite. So let's begin. So I'm going to restart that timer. We're going to grab the first 100 properties, and I believe this is going to be 100 properties right here. So we're going to copy this. We're going to now paste it in the address section here for column A, put in the value. Let's go and grab the loan one balance for the first 100 properties. So we're going to paste that into the mortgage amount. So I'm going to click on value for the paste. Let's grab now the MLS amount, and we're going to paste that list price here as a value. Now we're going to be working in the state of Georgia. So I'm going to select the state of Georgia. You'll see that it's auto-populated here. I'm going to drag that down as well, since all this data set is for one particular state. It makes it nice and simple. We're going to grab the seller's first name, which is here. The MLS agent name here is something that we will have to address when we do an email blast, but everything else looks good to go. I see all of their names, their first names. We need their email address, which is column L. Copy and paste this. And any missing email addresses, you'll just have to find that on Facebook, for example, or maybe on the brokerage website, or maybe the agent themselves have their own personal website that you can grab their email address from. We'll also need the days on market. So we're going to copy the first 100. Let's paste the value. And now we need the estimated total monthly payment on the loan. So that's going to be the principal and interest off of the current loan that the property has. So this estimated total monthly payment, which is here on column F, this is the total monthly payment, but it's not really a total monthly payment. It's only principal and interest that PropStream is able to calculate for us. So it's the principal and interest payment of the existing loan that's on the property. But we're going to need this when we're doing the hybrid underwriting. So I got to copy and paste this information over as well. I'm going to put that under the P and I. I'm going to click on value. The last thing we need is the rental amount. So the rental amount we were able to auto-populate. We're going to grab 100. The first 100 values here. Copy. Auto underwrite for the rental value section. And we're good to go. The telephone number we can skip for this time being. Telephone number is only if you want to follow up with the agent or seller, but it's not mandatory for the auto underwrite. So now we have everything we need. I'm going to pause the timer ever so briefly here. And one thing that I'm noticing immediately right off the bat is the P&I for this particular property is exceptionally high. I see that there's a mortgage amount here for $2 million and that the P&I here is $15,000. So whoever has this property on 1164 Christian Road in Georgia, I'm sorry, you're paying $15,000 in principal interest for your property. That doesn't seem too pleasant at all. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to change that P&I over to something more manageable. Okay, so I just went on ahead and I just changed the numerical values here so that we have something even to work with the auto underwrite. So we're going to have 25 subject to, 25 regular seller finance, and 25 reverse seller finance. We'll have 26 hybrids, so we're going to have a little over 100 offers here. And we're going to use the auto underwrite feature for all of these properties. And now I'm just briefly looking at it just to make sure that everything is according to my liking. And looks like everything is good to go. So now I'm going to restart the timer here, and I'm going to select the subject to auto creation for the LOIs. They're going to auto-populate here in this particular folder, so you're going to see that happen in real time. And so we'll have 25 subject to properties with the property address and all the numerical values for that LOI. So let's start that. I'm going to start the timer here. I'm going to save my workbook one more time, pull up the folder path, and let's click on the macro. And so what's basically to happen is that now the Jericho software is going to read the column that you saw here where it says hybrid, seller finance, and subject to. It's going to read that column and it's going to distinguish whether or not we're working with a subject to, hybrid, or seller finance property based off of the current list price and the encumbrance amount. And it's going to auto create all of our LOIs for that property. So tremendous amount of time has been saved here with all the numerical values now being injected into the LOI that the seller is going to get. So the moment that this is done with the auto underwriting, we're going to then open up one of these PDF files just so you can view it and have an idea of what the seller or agent is actually going to receive. So I'm going to let this run for a couple more seconds. It might be another 15-20 seconds and then we'll come back. Okay, so it was really interesting because the moment that I had just said that, the auto underwrite had just finished, so I didn't even have to wait more than another 5 seconds. So we have 25, 26. Do we have 26 LOIs? We have 25. We have 25 items selected, 25 subject to LOIs created. So we're going to open up one of these LOIs. We can see here that now this is going to be the cash offer that the seller gets. Offer number 2 is going to be the servicing agreement for the subject to, a non-refundable down payment, some information regarding the subject to, as well as our proof as a credible investor. So this is going to be LOI number 1 for the viewing. And now let's look at LOI number 2. And we can see here that we have distinctive numerical values and distinctive property addresses. So these are not identical whatsoever. So the numerical values that have been associated with this property are completely different than what seller number 1 is going to receive. Seller 1 and seller 2 are both getting a subject to offer that is catered to their property. So we're good to go on the LOI. Let's minimize out of Adobe. And now let's continue on. We're going to now auto create the seller finance. Now, in order to auto create the seller finance, the first thing that we need to do is we need to calculate the maximum seller monthly payment that they can receive. So this macro here is going to identify the highest interest rate for that property. So that whatever the highest interest rate that we can offer the seller is then going to be the maximum monthly payment that the seller can receive from us, because we have a target cash on cash of 10% in this scenario. I'm going to restart the timer, and we're going to now first calculate the maximum monthly payment that the seller can receive. Okay, so now the seller finance maximum monthly payment has been found for the traditional seller finance. So I just stopped the timer here. I let this process for about 2 or 3 minutes. And so it had found the maximum monthly payment for the seller for 25 properties. So we were able to take away the manual work of having to do that ourselves. And we just did an auto underwrite for 25 properties for seller finance. So that is tremendously helpful and super efficient on time. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the last 25 properties here. And the last 25 properties, I'm going to do a reverse seller finance. So I'm going to change this to yes. And that's going to change the values here for reverse seller finance. We already have a distinctive list here where I want to do a reverse seller finance. So we're going to change the starting row to, it looks like it's going to be row 89. So row 89 is going to be our starting row. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rerun the maximum monthly payment, but based off of a reverse seller finance underwriting. So we're going to run this macro again. I'm going to start the timer. And now it's going to find the maximum monthly payment based off of a reverse seller finance underwriting. So super helpful for us, especially if we're trying to limit the amount of cash that the seller is going to receive on the back end from a traditional seller finance. We're limiting the amount of cash that the seller is going to receive as a total payment, and then we're going to increase our cash on cash return. And that's only done with the reverse seller finance underwriting. So I'm going to sit back here and let the Jericho just run its numbers and figure out what the best monthly payment we can offer to the seller based off of the reverse seller finance. All right, so now that the reverse seller finance calculations have been calculated, now we can start auto create the LOIs for seller finance for all of them. So we'll do 25 LOIs for traditional seller finance and 25 LOIs for the reverse seller finance. So we're going to have a total of 50 LOIs being auto created for us. I'm going to move my folder here to my secondary screen real quick, and I'm going to change the starting row back to, let's see, we can start this at row 16 since that's going to be the first row for the seller finance. And so the moment that I click on this blue button within the Jericho, this blue button here is now going to create the seller finance LOIs for us. So I'm going to restart the timer now, and we're going to create 50 seller finance LOIs. So let's start that. It's going to do its thing. It's going to take a little bit of time, but that's okay, because this is all being automated for us, and we can just sit back and let the magic happen. Now, something I also noticed here while I'm letting this process is that I've noticed that the Jericho is running a little bit slower than it normally does, and I think it's only because I'm recording this video here live. My RAM is probably being utilized a lot right now by the recording of this video, because normally these LOIs and the auto underwriting for the monthly payments is done really, really quick. So it's actually taking a little bit longer than it should be, and I think it's only because I have the recording, and this recording is taking up a lot of RAM on my computer. But that's okay. We're going to let this run, and while it's running, we'll just hang out. It's going to auto underwrite everything for us. So super beneficial and a major game changer. Okay, so now the seller finance LOIs have been created. So I'm going to go into my LOI folder file path, and we should have a total of 75 LOIs. As you can see here, it says 75 items selected. So all of the LOIs now have been constructed. So let's pull up one of these LOIs for the seller finance. This may end up being a subject to. I had ironically clicked on a subject to LOI. I don't know how that happened. Let's click on another one here. Hopefully this is a seller finance. Okay, yes. This looks like it's a seller finance. So you can see here that the layout here on this LOI is distinctively different than the subject to. And we actually have a automated payment structure that the seller is going to receive. So this is super helpful in terms of a visualization and professionalism when you're sending out an LOI to the seller or the agent. Just putting out a random offer on an email template that says, we're going to give you set and so purchase price, set and so down payment, and here's your interest rate. No, that's not enough. You need to present this to the seller or they're never going to accept your creative finance offer. They need to see the difference between the current market value of where the property is sitting at and how much of a difference it's going to look like to them if they do indeed get a seller finance deal. If they get the seller finance and they accept to it on this particular property, they're going to get a 15% gain. So they're getting $72,000 over their current market value on the property. So that is a lot of money. They're going to receive that $72,000 over the course of 5 years on this seller finance. But you can see here that the layout is different and that we have automated this process for the seller finance to look super professional for both a cash and a seller finance opportunity. So I'm going to exit out of this and we've got 25 LOIs remaining, and that's going to be for the hybrid. Now the hybrid, we don't need to calculate what the seller finance monthly payment is going to be because all of the hybrid acquisitions that are being calculated here on the Jericho are going to be principal only payments to the seller. It's not desirable as an investor to have interest added to the second position note or third position note if there is one. So we're doing principal only payments on the seller finance portion that the seller is going to receive for their remaining equity. So the monthly payment here is going to be $77 to the seller. So the $77 to the seller is principal only. There's no interest, even though it says that there's a 1.93% interest. That's only because we did a auto underwrite for the seller finance. So that macro then gets imported in column V. But rest assured, there is no interest on this monthly payment that the seller is going to receive. And we're doing that intentionally so that our cash on cash, you can see here that the cash on cash on this property is going to be a 13.81% cash on cash because we are intentionally giving the seller principal only with no interest. What I am doing though is that I am offering to pay the seller more than what it's currently worth. So that is why you see here on column U, row 6, that the purchase over the market value is 5%, meaning that if it's listed at $500,000, I am willing to give the seller 5% more than what it's currently worth, not what it's currently listed at, what it's currently worth. And so they're going to receive a premium for accepting the hybrid offer. The monthly payment to the seller is not going to be extreme as a monthly payment because the investor now has to take over the principal and interest of a existing loan. But that's a benefit also to the investor because now our cash on cash, as you can see here, is going to be a 13.81. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run the purple button here. And this purple button is going to it's going to auto create all of the hybrid LOIs for us. So I'm going to pull up the folder file path and I'm going to change the starting row to, I think it's going to be row 13. So we're going to change this to row 13. And now we're going to create the hybrid LOI for all of these. And so now I'm just going to click on this icon here. We'll start the timer. So 25 hybrid LOIs are going to be automated for us. So if you know anything about the manual underwriting for a hybrid property, it is super tedious and sometimes it's challenging because you have two existing notes that you need to account for. The existing note with the lender and the new note that you're creating with the seller. So what I like about this is that we can eliminate some of that headache by only doing principal only to the seller for that second position note, which is the remaining equity that they do have on the property. So we're going to let this run for probably about a minute or two. All right, so we're done. So the hybrid LOIs have been all created. So this is going to be the hybrid LOI that the seller receives. They're getting $51,000 down. We're giving them 5% over their market value for the property. And they're also going to receive a payment structure from us. So super beneficial. So we have the payment structure here for the seller, which is going to be identical to the seller finance, except that there's no interest being added. It's going to be principal only payments. So this is a nice visual that the seller can receive from us as the wholesaler or the investor so that they can understand what would be the difference between a creative finance solution versus a cash offer, or what the property is currently worth in terms of its market value. So that's our reverse seller finance LOI. So I'll exit out of that. And so this is a demonstration of just the power of the Jericho software, but we're basically about 80% complete. The last thing that we need to do is just copy and paste the property addresses, the agent or seller's name into the master tab and the blasting of emails. We're going to paste that information here. And then the moment that we click on the blast LOI emails, we're done. We can sit back. We don't have to do anything else. So I'm going to run this timer here, but we're basically finished. So let's start the timer again. Let me grab the agent or seller's name. I'm going to copy this, paste it into the master tab, which is going to be where the blasting email feature is. We're going to grab the agent or seller's email address. Now note that there are a couple of email addresses here that are missing, which is fine. When you are doing a real blasting of emails out to your seller or agent, make sure that you fill out these blanks ahead of time. And now we need to grab the property address. We'll paste that here. Now the telephone number we don't need. This is only if you want to get in contact with the seller or agent. So now that this has been imported here, this is all we need for the blasting of email. We don't need to import anything else here on this particular spreadsheet. We have the file name that's now going to be attached to this particular email. And this particular email is going to have the property address, the seller or agent's name with the attached LOI. Now, because we're doing a blasting of email, we are also going to have a random time delay that's going to separate each email. So in this case, I have it set between 3 and 5 seconds for demonstration purposes, but ideally you want to have a time delay between 30 and 60 seconds between each email that is sent out. We're doing this on purpose to create human-like behavior when we're sending out these LOIs, and so that the email providers don't think that this is some kind of robotic system. So I'm going to pause the timer real quick because I do want to explain something else here. And before we send out the blasting of emails, we're now going to convert those LOIs. And we're going to convert these LOIs that were just created, and we're going to certify those LOIs. So what I mean by that is that Adobe Acrobat has a feature where we can actually convert the existing PDF, and we can convert the existing PDF into a special PDF format. It's called the PDF A1B. So we're going to do that intentionally. Just need to find where my Excel creative LOIs are. Here it is. And so these LOIs here, we're going to convert all of these LOIs within a couple of seconds to a specific format. It's going to be dropped in this folder. And so we're going to certify these LOIs. And so I'm going to start the timer again. And then once the conversion has been done, I'll open up the certified LOI so that you can see the difference. So let's start it. And let's start converting. We're going to do 100 certified LOIs at once. I don't think I've done that many with this functionality of the Jericho. So this is even interesting to me just to see how well it's going to be able to manage that volume of data. So let's start this. We're going to have 100 black prompts here open up on my desktop screen, but you can see here that it is putting a lot of stress on my CPU and my RAM of my computer, mainly because I am recording this live. But we're done. So we just did everything. So we just did 100 conversions of that PDF A1B format. You're going to see that now in the certified LOIs. So here it is. I stopped the timer. We've got 100 properties listed here. Let's pull up one of these. And so you can see that this file is in a read-only format. It says that the file claims compliance with the PDF-A standard. If I click here on Adobe Acrobat Pro, we can verify the conformance, as Adobe does have that feature built into their program. So we're going to verify the conformance of the file, and we can see here that there's a verification that yes, this is indeed in a particular format. We can also open up the Prelight and we can analyze the document to verify that there aren't any issues. And in this case, we can see here that there's no problems found. So I'm actually going to pull up very briefly what the PDF A1B is and the benefits. So I'm going to pause this real quick. I'm going to put up those benefits here on the screen so that you can take a look at it, and then we'll resume. So here are the major benefits of the PDF A1B format. You can read this over, or you can pause the video here and just briefly read this. But now I'm just going to exit out of here, and we'll go back into our email blast. And remember what I said, that we're nearly done. The only thing that we need to do now is just click on the blast email. Now, granted, because this is a live tutorial, I really don't want to send out these emails to these particular agents, as a lot of these numerical values were adjusted for the seller finance and for the hybrid acquisitions. So I'm just going to put in my email address. But of course, I'm not going to send out 100 LOIs to my inbox. Otherwise, I'm going to overpopulate my inbox with random LOIs. So I'll probably just send out maybe 10 just for the tutorial's sake. But before sending it to myself, I'm going to set the display email to true. And let's take a look at the last email, or the last row here, which is going to be row 127. I want you to view what the Outlook email is going to look like. So we have Marshall. So Marshall is going to get an LOI for his property, and he's also going to get an attached LOI. So when I click on this button here, the blast LOI, the email itself is going to auto-populate on my screen, and so you'll be able to view it before it's actually sent out to the seller or agent. You can turn off that feature by just setting that to false. So let's click on that, and I did see it pop up. It was on my secondary screen. So here it is. So we have my email, we have the property address and a subject line, we have the agent or seller's name, some embedded text that we can change at will, and this is going to be auto-populated for us, the embedded property address that we're referring to, some conditions about the terms of the sale, including EMD and due diligence period, and our name and our number. So this is all being auto-populated for us. So super beneficial. So I'm now going to do the last 10 rows for demonstration purposes. We're going to click on this button here. You're going to get a prompt that shows up on your screen that's going to tell you the progress of how many emails have been allocated for the email deliverability. So we can see here that we're sending email 93 of 102. It's loading. We're going to go to my inbox. I'm going to refresh this, and it'll likely be here, and I can see it now. So these emails are being auto-populated at this moment. So they've been sent to my email box directly. So we can click on one of them, and this is what the seller or agent's going to receive from us. I can open up the LOI, I can preview it, and so this is a very professional manner of presenting an offer to the seller or agent. And now we're done. So let's go back into the Jericho, as I did hear the little ping that the email campaign has been completed. And so it basically took us 30 minutes according to the recording of this video, but it would likely take us 20 minutes to do, just because the macros are running a little bit slower since I am recording this live. But either way, we just created 100 offers, and we did that within minutes. Let's go back into my email inbox. Let's refresh it, and we can see here that everything's been auto-populated. So this one happened to be Frank for this particular address. And if I go back into the Excel workbook and we look for Frank, you can see here that it is indeed correct. So this concludes the tutorial here for the Jericho 4.0 and how we can auto create and email blast a ton of offers to the seller or agent within minutes. So I hope you found this helpful. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section below. Be sure to check out my Discord community, as you'll have access to both myself and like-minded investors. Thank you for watching, and take care.
I'm calling the angels down. I'm storming the gates of hell. Tell the devil he don't own my soul. I'm taking back what the enemy stole.